And what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. This week, we've got lots of MLS news to cover. So, just like a few weeks ago, we're splitting it into two. Tonight, we're going to cover Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez throwing absolute fits over the new MLS rules to speed up the game, as well as breaking down a fight for the ages between New York City and TFC that happened last weekend. I'm Andrew. That's Connor over there. And this is MLS.
Yay, we're back.
Messed it up again. This and here is this week's MLS news. All I want to do is talk about history. I don't know what to tell you, man. Like it's just there's nothing better than a good history story.
You're like two years early on this. We'll cover it in like 2 years when it is a history worthy episode.
Fair, fair, fair. What's up, buddy?
Not much, buddy.
First, why don't we talk about scarf of the week? What are you rocking?
Well, for the Toronto episode, it's been a while since I brought it out, so I'm bringing out my Toronto scarf with some lovely maple leaves on the side.
Not bad. I myself, if we're talking about Miami, have got freedom to dream, baby. Little inner Miami action. Short, sweet, and to the point. You want to just dive right into it?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, not too much waffling to do here. We got a couple of episodes to record, so let's just jump into the big one. Lionel Messi, the face of the league, complaining because he was kept out of a game for 2 minutes for needing treatment on a tackle that wasn't card worthy. Likewise, Luis Suarez was about to fight a referee over the fact that he hurt his team by not getting off the field fast enough. So let's dive into some of the details and then we'll share our thoughts on it. A few weekends ago, right after we recorded our news segments, this whole story dropped of Messi and Suarez becoming irate over new rules. So we weren't able to record it in real time, but let's dive into it now and kind of break it down now that we've got kind of a withdrawn view of it, right? I think a lot of people put their opinions out there, and I think I even did. I went a little, 10K impression tweet on, making fun of it. But let's take a step back and look at it. Oh, was that me dropping our Twitter that you should go follow? Damn right it was. So in the game, Lionel Messi was fouled by former Atlanta United flop George Campbell. Just seems as all they put out these days are flops at Atlanta United side.
That was so unnecessary and uncalled for.
No,
I will be reaching out to George directly and sending him your address.
you go right ahead because it's changing here in about 2 weeks.
I'll send him the new one too. It's
You don't
actually
know
close
the
by
new
to you,
one.
so he could go. Oh wait, no, he's not there anymore. Never mind.
That's funny. Anyways, Messi got fouled and then he went down injured. He stayed down requiring treatment, meaning that he was sent off the pitch for 2 minutes to be treated before being allowed to enter. Usually, the only way that doesn't have to happen is if the foul resulted in a card. But because there was no card, he was told 2 minutes on the sideline, see you in a little bit. In his anger, he turned to what I believe is the fourth official, but the camera was right there. And he goes in Spanish, if we're implementing these rules, we are not doing well. Essentially saying that this is hurting the game instead of helping the game. Later on in the game, Luis Suarez was substituted and did not leave the field in 10 seconds, meaning that his replacement had to wait an entire minute before entering the field. According to a tweet, he was reportedly held back from the fourth official by Tata Martino and other players because he was so unhappy with the decision. Right, wrong, change needed. Connor, give me your thoughts, buddy.
I mean, I personally think the sport's heading in the wrong direction if we're just going to keep rewarding teams that fake injuries at the end of games and really like try to just let things linger on instead of actually playing the game. Like if you're a talented enough team, then you shouldn't need to lay on the floor and have cramps at the end of the game all of a sudden and take like a couple of minutes to walk off the field when you've been subbed off. Because if you're strong enough defensively, then you'll be able to hold out for the extra couple of minutes that you're saving there. So I don't really see an issue with the rule. Um, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if at some point it gets implemented in other leagues around the world as well. I mean, considering that it wouldn't be the first time that MLS has implemented something first, and then other leagues have started to adopt it. And I would imagine, I would think it's similar to a lot of other things that first get implemented. Like there's going to be some friction at the start, the same way that the VAR had friction when it first was introduced in England. I mean, in fairness, it still has friction today, but when that was first introduced, I feel like there was even more friction, especially from the fans. And it's just something you kind of got used to over time. So that's my hope for the rule, is that people and players will kind of get used to it a bit more. And I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing for the game. I think it's good for the fans that are paying to watch a full game and not watch 5 minutes of people laying around on the field. Um, Obviously, if there's serious injuries, like that should take uh, as much time as needed to make sure that the players are okay, and what needs to be done on the field is done, regardless of how much time is being taken. But if it's just like, I mean, we've all seen it. We've all seen the games where players teams up one goal, 87th minute rolls around, and all of a sudden everybody on the field has a cramp. You've seen videos of like teams where multiple guys all of a sudden have cramps at the exact same time and fall to the floor. Like it's a part of the game. It's the same way flopping is a part of the game as well. Like I don't have a problem with a rule that tries to mitigate that.
On the surface, right? The whole rule is like if you're down and you're truly injured, you're going to need at least 2 minutes to get treated and warm up and be cleared. So you're going to be missing it anyway. It doesn't matter, right? Or you get subbed and there's no wait, right? And that makes sense, right? We see all the time people like you just mentioned rolling around, holding their knee when not they get hit on the left ankle and they're holding their right knee, and it's like, oh, I need treatment and all this stuff, and we all know that time doesn't actually get added back on. So it's a way to implement that, sure. However, there are ways that this can be improved, and this is a really good example of it, and it's very easy to improve, and it gets improved with common sense. Because the rules, people are like, oh, Messi said the rule is bad. They got to get rid of it because the face of the league is saying it's bad. No, it's not. The rules are here to stay, and I wouldn't be shocked if other leagues start to implement them because they are good for the game in principle. However, add in a little bit of common sense to what we're doing, just like many calls that you make in this in the game, whether it's this league, overseas, north, south, whatever. When Messi went down injured in this game, he was removed and told to wait for 2 minutes because to prevent time wasting, right? That's the whole point of this rule. Miami was losing 2-0 at the time. I'm no mathematologist. I mean, I guess technically I am, but you don't try and time waste when you're losing a game, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense. That doesn't, 2 and 2 don't make 4 in that sense. There is a very easy way to clean this up, right? It's the first year of the rules, and like you mentioned, either you're going to get used to them or we can adapt them a little bit, not get rid of them, but just tweaks, right? Little tweaks. Always look back and try and make things better. Give referee discretion here, right? You've got your mics, you've got the fourth official in the ear, right? You're getting information as the game goes on. Fourth official says, okay, that's a Miami player down. They're losing 2-0. Clearly, there's no time wasting that's happening here. He just has a little bit of a knock. If he comes off the field, that's fine. He's allowed to re-enter as soon as he's ready to go, right? Very simple. Very, very easy. I don't think that's a problem at all. I don't think that's a difficult thing to do either because it's numbers don't lie. If you are losing, time wasting is not what's going to happen, right? So very easy to just say, hey, that changed. I mean, we do that in the college game right now, where if you are winning a game and you make a sub after 5 minutes, clock stops to prevent time wasting and strategic changes to kill the game off. That usually is a running clock. So it's very easy to make those changes, right? Now, I do want to kind of shift to the other one that not a lot of people talking about, probably because it's less controversial, but Luis Suarez, I think, is a different story. Like I mentioned, he got subbed off, didn't leave in 10 seconds, and then his replacement had to wait a minute before getting on the field. And then he loses his mind and whatever, and I think it is the stupidest thing that he's done since being here. He got subbed in the 92nd minute of a game he was winning by 1 goal, and he walked off the field, knowing that these were the rules. Of course you're going to get the punishment. Like, this isn't like, oh, you got hurt and you're getting subbed off and whatever. You got subbed in the 92nd minute. You're winning a game by 1, and we can either do 2 things here. We're going to hold him off for a minute, or we're going to give you a yellow card, and that'll going to start to accumulate, and you're going to miss a game, 90 minutes of a game long term. And now he gets upset because he didn't get off fast enough, when all you have to do is go off of any side and start walking around. But because you chose not to, and that happened, you had to be held back from a fourth official. Grow up, my guy.
Yeah, I mean that's not even, I don't think, an MLS specific rule. I mean, I think a lot of leagues around the world have that rule where it's just like once you're subbed off, you should go to like whatever the closest line, like out of bounds area is, and then just walk around. That way you're not all the way on the other side of the field wasting multiple minutes while you walk off and take your lap of glory before you come off. So yeah, I would agree with you there. I think that's pretty childish to make such a big fuss over a rule that's been in place and is in place pretty commonly in a lot of other leagues as well. I mean, I'd be you'd be hard to find. I think it'd be difficult to find someone who's going to argue with that rule. Like, I don't think necessarily we need to watch a player walk off the field. I think there's more argument to make in the other rule that you were talking about, especially when you reference the situational awareness of when someone's going down with an injury. But yeah, I mean, I feel like, I mean, it's not, it shouldn't be surprising that Suarez would pull something like that. Like, it's in his history. He's a troublemaker. He's a hothead, who likes to stir things up and sometimes cause issues. And so it's kind of just in his MO. It's what you get with obviously the uber amount of talent that he brings as well. So it's not overly surprising, but it sucks to see because it's just childish.
Yeah, like I said, I was just kind of like there's room for improvement on some of them, and there always will be every time you put new rules. I mean, you see it in every league, every time that you go right. VAR can be, you know, VAR can be determined in different or utilized in different ways, I should say, right? Whether it be offside is clear and obvious or you're drawing lines to the millimeter, right? Like there are different ways that work and whatever it may be, but this one, I'm all for this one, and I think that the reaction wasn't warranted for the punishment. You know what I mean? Like I think it was just a over explosion on something it didn't need to be.
So you could adjust rules, or you could be the Premier League and just quit on them when it doesn't go your way.
And it's funny because only the only people who are opposed to are the people who feel like they've been hard done by, right? Like Wolves are like, we need to scrap the whole thing because we didn't get the benefit of being 11th instead of 14th this year. Ah, stop it.
I can't believe how much they fumbled the bag on VAR. Like, that is a clown class in how to use VAR.
It's fun. You know that meme that's like, oh, we're looking for the person who did this. It's like, oh, VAR causes more controversy than it does, help fix issues. Stop drawing millimeter lines and trying to figure out every inch of what you're doing. You did it to yourself. Like this is your fault. You can fix it. Like it's not that hard.
Yeah, and the minute that they get rid of it, the first controversial call that comes into play, they're going to be up in arms like, why did we get rid of VAR? Like, it would have saved us here, like.
Yeah. Damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? You're never gonna please everybody. And you'll have the old school who's like, yeah, this is the way it should be. This is proper football, and this is how it's, no technology in our game. And then you're gonna have the people who are like, yeah, but they were wrong, and humans make mistake, and we have the ability to fix it, so maybe we should fix it. If it means that we're not drawing lines anymore and it's just clear and obvious, like a red card or a last man challenge or whatever, fine. If we don't want to do the lines anymore, let's not do the lines anymore. Like it's not a hard fix. It's not a difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
I don't think that gets passed anyways, but
No, I'd be surprised. That would be so archaic of them to get rid of VAR in this day and age.
yeah, like Sweden, I think is the first one that doesn't have it. But this is the Premier League. Like, you know how much
Or
money is riding
CONCACAF.
on these? Yeah, yeah. You know how much money is riding on this stuff? Like,
Yeah.
you can't afford to get this wrong.
That'd be a big swing and a miss. It would look really bad, I feel like, on them.
Yeah. Well, anyways, to come full circle on it, right? Rules are good. They shouldn't go anywhere, and I don't expect them to be just wiped off the face of the earth. But I do think in maybe next year they can start tweaking them a little bit and allowing some more common sense judgment by the referees, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are in control, right? If they see an opportunity where it's like, hey, this is just something that happened, let's play on, then let's play on, right? All righty. Let's then move on to the meat and potatoes of this one, as I called it. Back on May 11th, New York City traveled to Toronto for what was just a general midseason match, which quickly got out of hand with a scrum at the end of the game, headlined by coaches squaring up to each other, players attacking players, an insane press conference, and a whole bunch more. And usually this is right where we're just like, that's funny. Look at that. It's a fight. And we move on. We talk about something else. But the accusations that came out, the deep diving that had to go into this, we figured it required a little bit of a further chat. So I'm going to break down kind of the happenings, and then I'll bring Connor in for a little bit of thoughts, because it's just it's wild, and I don't know. I don't think I have a lot of questions. Just more like I want reactions out of you. Because I know you're just like the reaction guy. You're just kind of going vibes.
What I'm here for. I'm my own reaction channel on this on the podcast.
That spinoff, the designated players
God,
react.
no, stop with the spinoffs. You keep getting spinoffs, you really are going to suggest 7 days a week.
All righty, let's start with the main part of this, right? So right away, when you're watching this video posted by The Athletic, Sean Johnson is seen to be going straight for New York center back Tanasiewicz. After being separated, he runs around the blockade, gets straight into Tanasiewicz's face, puts him in a bear hug, and prevents him from leaving as he tries to have this really strong conversation with him. Don't you ever do that again. Now, I don't know what quite led up to this in terms of on the field stuff, but we'll get to the accusations here in a second. At the same time that this is happening, TFC head coach John Herdman is seen making a beeline for Nick Cushing. He is very, very animated, and he bumps chests with Cushing, who is just walking away from the whole mess. He's like what that that meme, everything's the whole thing's burning around you, just I'm not watching. Right, that's what he was trying to do. He's like, I'll deal with it later. I'm not getting involved in this. And then Herdman goes in and bumps him, and gets in his face, and then is pulled away. And it's like somebody threw a little spitball or something at it. He just looks around. He's like, what was that? And he just keeps walking. So completely unbothered. You also saw Prince Owusu get really, really incensed, attempting to break the blockade and get after Tanasiewicz. I mean, he was being held back. I mean, he's a big dude, but he was being held back by 3 different players, and it ended up not working. But that was all I could get from the video itself. But after it all went down, Herdman goes into a press conference and makes an allegation that they did all of this because when the teams met last month, Nick Cushing punched a 19-year-old player in the face during halftime. This 19-year-old pretty quickly was identified, since he's the only 19-year-old on TFC's roster, and that's Jaquil Marshall-Ruddy. But when the dust settles, Richie Laryea gets a 3-match ban, and I tried my best. I couldn't find what he did. So if anybody's listening and can share that with us, I'd love to see it. Prince Owusu and Tanasiewicz got 2. Johnson and Herdman both got 1. Bernadeschi also saw a second yellow in the game and was suspended against Nashville. So that's another player that was out. But that's the breakdown I was able to get. Just give me those vibes, Con.
I love this for the league, because I would imagine if you're a Toronto or an NYC fan, this is if this continued for the rest of the season, it's the start of a rivalry between the two of them. This is how you organically start rivalries, with this level of intensity on the field. Something like this, or a really tight, close playoff battle. I mean, I'm going to take a second to brag here, but as a Knicks fan, finally getting to see the Knicks be successful in the playoffs, the series against the Sixers was so intense. Every single game was single digits, super, super close. And it's created this intense rivalry between the two sides right now. And even though this isn't a playoff game, this level of intensity, I think, gets the fans really into it. So I love it from a league perspective. I think it gets NYC fans more involved in supporting their team, and now having someone that they can root against more actively. And same thing for Toronto. Now that gets people involved in their team, someone that they can root against. In terms of suspensions and everything, and allegations, it's hard to say unless there's something concrete to back it up. John Herdman says that, Cushing punched Jaquil Marshall-Ruddy in the face, but has Jaquil Marshall-Ruddy said anything about that? Or has anybody had any video on it? Because I think Herdman said that the videos happened to be down at the time when it happened, which is, it's okay, well, that's a little too convenient, don't you think?
Well, we're gonna get into that in a little bit, but So the reason why I couldn't find Richie Larea is because he was off screen when this was all going down. Um, they were kind of following it away, but from what it sounds like is that he made contact with Nick Cushing. So Nick Cushing, as he's trying to leave, Richie Larea, he goes up to him at the beginning, like right as the thing's happening, and then it pans away, and you can kind of see as it's happening. He takes a quick look over his shoulder, and then it goes away. So something must have happened off there, and 3 games I think is a lot. But this is how you know New York City is the worse off New York team, right? Real New York teams fight Toronto in the tunnel at halftime of their most important playoff match in team history. Like people know when to pick fights. New York City quite clearly don't. After a game in the middle of a regular season that doesn't matter. Yeah.
Are you done with your agenda now?
Oh no, just wait for the other talking points we've got.
Oh God.
The suspensions are what they are, right? Like I thought maybe it would have been longer for Johnson and Herdman for just straight up losing their minds and pretty much start what seemed to be starting the whole thing, right? Johnson, I mean, not only did he go after them once, twice, 3 times with them watching this video, he then grabbed him and like basically picked him up. He's about to throw him to the ground, but he held off. Like I know he's usually a good guy, right? Like he's usually the peacekeeper, so maybe that's what got him got off. But I mean, John Herdman, like first of all, not trying to stop his players, right? Inciting the whole thing, and then going up to the other head coach and bumping him. Probably felt like it could have been a little bit more. Everybody else felt okay. Again, Richie Larea, I still don't know. I still haven't seen what he's done, but it's a whatever. But really, the thing for me is this allegation about Cushing punching a kid at halftime of the game that they last played, right? So your thoughts on, and I know you shared that a little bit, but your thoughts on that in and of itself.
It's a pretty like wild claim to make. Like if you're gonna make the claim that one of the other head coaches assaulted one of your players, like I would think you gotta have like good reason to believe that, whether that's like something from the player themselves or like video of it or some other like even if it's an official's testimony or something like something to back it up. But it just felt like this came out of left field. It was like, okay, you said this happened last month. Why did this not get brought up a month ago when it happened? Why is it just getting brought up now? Like if this was something that happened, and maybe they did, maybe they brought it up with officials and it's like being investigated or whatever, and so they couldn't say anything about it. But it just feels weirdly convenient that it was just all of a sudden brought up now that he's kind of like on the hot seat for the issue. Not on the hot seat like he's gonna get fired, but like he's kind of like in the middle of the mix, and now all of a sudden it comes up. So maybe I'm like reading too much into it, but it's a pretty wild thing, like claim to make on somebody else.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. And the fact that it's just coming out now is the part that gets me the most, right? Like if this actually, and I'm not saying it didn't happen, right? But if it did, don't you think somebody would have said something a month ago when this
Well, you would
game
hope
took
they
place?
would say something. Like that's a pretty serious thing for someone to do.
Oh yeah, exactly. And then coincidentally, the video that got sent into the league didn't show the area of the incident.
Yeah. Coincidentally, the cameras were down. Like this sounds like some like Boeing whistleblower type of thing that's going on here.
Yeah, that is so old. There are like 700 movies you could have quoted, and you picked the one current event.
I couldn't think of a movie.
What a
Honestly, I was
loser.
gonna say something maybe even worse, but let's
um,
I'll keep that for off
yeah,
the air.
yeah, that's probably a good idea if it's worse. And again, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but you know, Tommy Scoops came out and kind of shared my feelings on this. Like, if a coach punches a player and there's any inkling of proof at it, that dude's on the he's done forever. Like, there's no we're gonna like you're gone, you're fired, you're cut, and you're not cut. You're not allowed to coach in here anymore. Like, you thought Bruce Arena's whole thing was bad? This dude's got proof.
Yeah,
See ya.
maybe that's what Bruce did. Maybe he punched
Yeah,
somebody.
maybe. Because that's not even like this is a bad look on the league. That's straight up assault on a teenager. Like you're 50 something years old, you're beating up on kids. Like what the hell? And then here's the other thing that kind of doesn't line up, right? Somebody on the New York City side went back and watched the game on MLS TV, the second half. Marshall Ruddy played the whole game, and you would have thought that he just, they didn't even talk at halftime. They just went in, went out, nothing happened, right? Like there was no, he didn't come out like staring anybody down or like hitting people late or any of that. He just played, right? Which if you got punched in the face by a coach, you'd think that's probably, you've got something going on. There's adrenaline pumping through you, right? So again, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but here's the big kicker for me, right? There are cameras in the hall, in the tunnel leading up to the dressing rooms, right? Wherever you are. And I mean, maybe in New York City it's a bit different because they're at a baseball stadium. Maybe it's laid out differently. I don't know. But if this, because it happened at halftime, you would expect that it either happened right outside the tunnel, in the tunnel where the cameras should be, or one of the coach or the player crossed over to the other team's dressing room and started this whole thing, which, again, somebody would have reported on. That's not something that happened. You're just like, oh, okay, let's just keep playing, right? Somebody would have said something. So there's just so much that doesn't line up with this. And again, I want to emphasize this. Like, I'm not saying this didn't happen because Herdman is adamant that it did. Cushing is adamant that it didn't. We are just here going off of the information that we have. And I'm sure by the time this episode gets posted, more information is going to come out and going to look stupid anyway. But it's just a weird way to do it, right? Like if you think about baseball, like our beloved New York Mets, who still haven't figured out how to do it to Rhys Hoskins. If somebody does something bad to you, the very first chance you have, you hit him. You go after him, or you go in hard, in soccer, maybe you're going in hard for a challenge, you're hitting somebody a little bit late, whatever. End of the game, after you guys had just lost and somebody had gotten sent off for your team, I don't know. It feels like a weird time to do that. That's just me.
Yeah, I don't understand how nobody's asked Marshall Ruddy about this. Like, okay, Cushing says no, Herdman says yes. Why don't we ask the person that they're saying is the one that got punched? Unless there's some other Toronto 19-year-old that we're just missing. But it doesn't seem like anybody outside of the two coaches has been asked. And it's like, of course, each coach is going to agree or disagree with the statement. Like, Cushing's not going to come out and be like, yeah, I punched him in the face. If it, like, when there's been, like, absolutely nothing to show that he has done that. So I don't understand, like, how nobody else has been asked or how this hasn't been, like, looked into further because, like you said, it's a really serious claim to make. And if Cushing did actually do this, I would think I would be on board with you that he'd be out of a job here.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know. It seems like we should just wait and hope that there is more information that comes out about it. I don't necessarily think that Cushing did or did not do it. I feel like there's been so little information, it's hard to kind of make a conclusion on it.
Okay, so I'm going to cut out this next part, but I've got a video here of John Herdman at the press conference. Let's see what he has to say. Okay, so that gives a little bit more information here. I just took a look at the first minute and a half of the interview after the event, and the reason why everything kicked off is because allegedly, again, it's not videotaped, at least where we saw it. Tanasiewicz gave a headbutt to Sean Johnson, and that lit him up. Cool. But they also went on to say that the reason it escalated past that was because Cushing and other people cornered Marshall Ruddy, a 19-year-old, on his own and then hit him before walking away. At halftime of a game, it just doesn't line up, right? Like,
does he say that it's Marshall Ruddy that says that, or he just says the claim without saying like any source or anything from
this is Jonathan Osorio saying this. Like
this is Osorio saying
yes, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. This is Jonathan Osorio saying this. So,
and this would have taken place in the locker room, or this was on the field at halftime?
This was in the tunnel at halftime. And that's where then they go, after Osorio finishes his whole thing, Herdman, they asked Herdman, like, did you do anything about it? Did you send this in? And he goes, no, the cameras weren't working.
I feel like if you truly still believe it, you send it in. I mean, like we talked about before, that's a very serious claim to make. Like, if that actually happened to your player, how do you not like raise hell about that?
Yeah, and then he goes on to talk about the game. So, um, whatever. There's not more to add on to there, but a player goes and says that a 19-year-old was cornered and punched by a coach. They don't send in the video because apparently the tapes weren't working. And nothing else happens after that. So, I'm going to take a quick look here before we move on and actually end this because we're only doing the two topics today. So, just to look at the fixtures, this game, which they lost 2-1 at New York City, Keaton Park saw red in the 68th minute for a serious foul. Shaquille Marshall-Rutty played a full 90, got subbed off in the 93rd minute. He scored a goal in that game.
That's his first goal.
That's right. There are pieces here that are missing, I think. And again, somebody had made the point, right? Like, instead of dealing with it properly, like going to the league officials, referee report, like you mentioned, referee reports, player reports, whatever. So I think somebody said on Twitter here underneath there is they want to handle this WWE style where they get all pissed off and they come back in a month and beat up on each other again. Like, that's not how this works. There's a process. And
Yeah, but it's more exciting that way.
correct.
I'd be willing. I want to tune in for the next matchup between these two. I'll be honest.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying there's no room for retaliation, right? I'm not saying that like there's nothing that you should just let it on and play the game, right? Of course, you're going to go in a bit stronger, a bit harder. That's what these games kind of do. Now, I believe that they're done playing each other unless they both make the playoffs and play each other there. But
Yeah, I was just seeing that too.
yeah, but there's a better way to go about this than starting off. Now, the headbutt probably set off a chain reaction. Like, my guess is if that doesn't happen, everybody's off in their tunnels and there's nothing to talk about. But because that happened, then everybody blew up and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna throw it out in the world and see what happens," right? So, something to watch for sure, especially, man. This is just the way this would work, right? Like, we're gonna get to playoffs and it's gonna be a play-in game between New York and Toronto. One game winner moves on, loser goes home, and it's just gonna be a bloodbath.
Man, that would be must see TV though.
Oh, 100%. I don't know where I'd be, but I'd be tuning into that one for sure.
Oh, you'd be decked out in your Toronto gear, ready for that one, I'm sure.
I don't know. I don't like Toronto just as much as I don't like
I don't believe that for a second. I don't think there's any
not
team
to the
beating
same level.
NYC.
Not to the same level, but Toronto's up there. Like, I'd much rather prefer the Meteor, right? Just very, very small, enough just to take out like the teams.
Did you say the
And then we move
meteor?
Just a little Meteor, just a little baby. But yeah, so that's this episode of this week's MLS News. A very, very interesting one indeed. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you are following us wherever you get your podcasts. See you the next time we go live for Wednesday's episode. We're talking about new or former coaches in Nashville and at the Canadian men's national team. Make sure you're following us on social media so you can see where we post our clips. You can interact with us, hear our thoughts on things as they happen. That's mainly Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. So follow us over there. And yeah, we hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. See ya.